Yeah. Um, yep, I think so. I think we're good. Anyway, thanks for coming, my friend. It's been a while since we've seen each other because of COVID and everything else.
Yeah, it has. So this is, I mean, we've talked a little back and forth since, but it's nice to see your face.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. You too, man. Well, let's just get started. For everyone that's watching, I've known Sam for a long time now. Well, what is it? Probably 10, 12 years?
Yeah, so it was like 2005, I believe.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
so
Time goes by quick.
it does.
Uh, Sam was a Marine. He spent 2 tours in Iraq.
One tour in Iraq, I did 8 years total.
Okay.
My first 4 years was infantry, and my second 4 years I was an embassy guard. And at one of my embassies is where we met in
That's right.
Kyrgyzstan.
Exactly. Yeah. And now you're into international development, right? An operations specialist.
Yeah, I work for a nonprofit called DT Institute, and I've worked for the U.S. Agency for International Development for a few years, and I worked for some other another implementer called Commonics International, and I even did some freelance for a short period of time. But I've now been working in the international development field for about 8 years.
Yeah. And you live in DC, right? You've lived here the whole time, traveled a bit here and there.
Yeah, been living here since 2010 when I got out of the Marines. Came here, started going to school for my master's in conflict analysis and resolution, which I got from George Mason, just right across the Potomac here.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of like my catalyst to try and slowly work my way into international development, which is working from U.S. government contracts and other donors to try and help improve the quality of life in other countries and developing countries.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit, man. When you were younger, did you want to become a soldier? Was that a thing that you wanted to do, or did it just happen?
Oh no, it was something that I grew up in like rural Oklahoma. Me and all my friends, we played paintball and loved to run around in the woods and play guns and stuff. And we'd watch old war movies, and there was always a bunch of Vietnam vets that was like in our neighborhood who were like people we always looked up to. And so I kind of always wanted to join the military in some way, shape, or form. And in high school, when I got to understand more about what the different branches were, I just really had the calling to be a Marine. I figured, if you're going to do it, do it. That would look like the one that I would have the most interesting experience, I could say.
Yeah.
And at the time, I thought I'd do that, and just that would be my life. I thought 20 years would be exactly what I wanted to do, but after 8, I got tired. but growing up, yeah, no, I did want to be a Marine. It was an ambition for many years before I actually signed the papers.
And was the catalyst, the Iraq War?
No, because I joined before. So I joined before 9/11. When I was in boot camp, the only thing we had to compare anything to was the Gulf War. So we hadn't really become the hyper secure, ultra militarized society that we are now. That didn't happen until 9/11, which kicked off when I was in infantry school. So like 9/11 happened, and then there was 2 more years before any country was actually invaded. And I think that did spur a lot of enlistment. That still does to this day, but wasn't even wasn't even part of my calculus.
Yeah. If you were in infantry school while 9/11 happened, how come they didn't send you to Afghanistan?
Well, it took a while for Afghanistan to hit, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm in infantry school. That's a couple of months school, and from there I ended up going to what's called security forces, where we spend 2 years doing. It's like infantry work, but it's also just guard duty for
Yeah.
nuclear weapons that they move on and off of submarines. It's just like this small little thing that submarines get caught in. And I got caught in that from 2001 to like late 2002. And in the middle of like when 2003 rolls around and the first invasion of Iraq happens, that's when I actually get to the infantry and Marines. So then I had to like get in my unit. We had to all train up together, and it was about 6 months of training, and then we deployed. And that would have been called what they called OIF2 at the time. And that was like August of 2004 by the time I actually got to theater.
How how easy was it for you to get in? I mean, was it a
To join the Marines,
yeah,
I was pretty easy. I mean, they there are requirements. You have to be like so healthy
yeah,
and this, that, and the other. And but it is like going to the infantry, especially, is really easy. The biggest thing for Marines was just like don't have a bad drug test. Don't lie about anything, like any no parking tickets, no trouble with the law or anything like that. Like as long as you don't have anything like that, and you have like decent grades, which I did. I was like a BC student.
yeah.
Then it's a cakewalk. No, it's
As
very
long
simple.
as you don't lie about it, or if you like
If you
you've
lie
done
about
it,
it,
you
come
tell
out.
the truth, then you're good.
Yeah.
No.
No, yeah. So because like if you like some people would like lie and say they hadn't done anything, and then like something pops up on their urinalysis, and it's like they didn't pass the drug test, and that causes all kinds of trouble. I didn't have any problems like that, not at the time, so it's like so it was very very easy for me to get in. It wasn't easy to like go through the training and all that stuff. That was really hard. I joined with four other friends of mine that I went to like junior high and high school with, and I was one of five, and then only like two of us actually completed the training. Everybody else, yeah, it was three other guys who like either got injured or just mentally couldn't complete everything, so they
Yeah.
gave up on it and they went back home.
You see these movies where there's like this big fat dude and he goes to military training and like somehow he makes it through. Is that something that happens?
Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. Well, it was in the Marines. Like there were these guys who would join, and over the course of 13 weeks, they would just shed pounds. They would have all this like leftover skin at the bottom. At the end, it was a big problem for a lot of people. That guys would have just like lots of leftover skin afterwards, and because like they would just shed so much. It's very common. It's not easy for anybody. Everybody is going to be pushed to their physical limit, but like the way it's done is that it really does, as long as your body doesn't break. And some people do. You land wrong jumping off of something or fall down, run up some stairs. Like that's the type of thing that does happen. People fall out of their racks in the morning and break their ankle. Like that's
Oh man, yeah.
that does happen.
So it's mental. So it's a lot of mental and physical.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like they're yelling at you, and like you have like for the longest time, for like months, you have no free time to yourself. Imagine that. It's like if every minute of your life is purely regimented, and you're either being yelled at or you're asleep or maybe you're eating, but it's like every single minute of your time is taken from you. So it's like you give up so much. But at the time you're young, so you don't realize it.
Yeah.
It's like you're young, impressionable. I was like 17 when I actually went to boot camp, and I turned 18 in boot camp.
Yeah.
And it was like your brain is just like you're so young, like you don't know anything. You have no life experience to compare this experience to, so it makes you very pliable to all of that. Now I couldn't do it. I could some
Yeah.
fun at me like nobody wants to deal with that.
So right after you went to war, I mean, right after training, you went into Iraq?
No, I did No, like I had a whole nother like 2 years of guarding nuclear weapons on like the Florida coast, in this like
Okay.
little swampy submarine base. But it took a while before, because like after 9/11, we didn't immediately invade Afghanistan. Like that took
Yeah, I
time.
think it was like 8 or 9 months after that, and then like 3 years after went to Iraq or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
After training, did you feel confident to go into war? Like right after training?
No, because like training actually didn't end. Like you finish infantry school and then you'll go to like another school and then you go to your unit and your unit trains for 6 months. And after I did that, we're working with my team, getting to know them, going through a bunch of like really hard shit. Because like the actual training up before you go to a deployment
Yeah.
is that's the really hard stuff. That's when you're really carrying like super heavy stuff. You're out in like the desert for weeks on end. You're doing like month-long trainings. And so after doing all that, then I'm like in the best shape of my life. Like I've done all these crazy things with these guys. We have really good rapport. And for the first time since the Gulf War, Americans are going to actual combat. So we were very serious about it.
Yeah.
I did feel confident going in.
That's okay. When you were there, how long were you in the country, and then were you there the whole time? You couldn't go on R&R, nothing, right? Just
No, we
until
were there for 9 months, from like August to April or May, if I remember right,
yeah,
2014, 2015, and we were on a little border post. If you go all the way west on the Euphrates to where Iraq meets Syria, there's
yeah,
like a little town called Usaiba. We were at the border checkpoint, and it was a small little place. It was only like a company, which is not the largest military unit. It was quite small. It was 4 platoons and attachments, and it was all like a big sandbag hexco barrier monstrosity. But it was all like really pulled together pretty quick, because like the group that invaded came in and they held the town, and then we showed up and like dug in and let the guys who had took the town, they left. They had done their thing, and we kind of came in for what's called a RIP, or relief in place.
okay. So when I talk to a lot of people, military people. Um, how do you think that war was conducted? Like did America fight that war properly?
It depends on it and what lens you want to put to that. So it's like tactically, you know, arguably the country was taken well. Like the push through
Right.
Iraq to invade it, that was a very well executed, assault.
Yeah.
But if you look at like a larger lens, like did this make sense? It's like it really didn't. It was actually, been understood to be a huge mistake, and it should never have happened. So if you look at that, it's like, yeah, we took down this country really quickly, and if our intent was just to lay waste to it and leave, then yeah, that would have been a good idea. But the way we ended up taking it, in hindsight, it wasn't such a good idea, because a lot of what we did was just roll over the old Baathists, completely yank them all out by the teeth, and then slowly try to install some other government. And that's a foolish way to go about
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like there a lot of times that okay, a lot of like what I've read from generals and other foreign policy experts, is commentary that finding some of those Baathists to work with would have helped create a more stable Iraq right off the bat. Not completely leveling the country might not would have been like a better idea than kind of the shock and awe approach that we had, because it's extremely difficult to rebuild after that. As you can see, like there's to this day it's racked in turmoil.
Is
So
there any other way you can win a war instead of shock and awe?
I don't know. I think that's probably the easiest. Okay, militarily, if you're really trying to like take a regime out militarily, yeah, you can. I think we kind of did that with Gaddafi. You know, arguably in Libya, there's leaning more heavily on proxies. The way we
Yeah,
did with ISIS. Most of the fighting that we did against ISIS was done with proxies and done with our partners and people who trusted us and supported us, who we later betrayed. But that's another way to do it. Or you know, just not invading, just sanction the living bejesus out of them and let them sit, and it becomes a war of attrition. It's like
yeah,
why would we want to go to war with Iran right now? Why would we want to go to get into an armed, engaged conflict with a very heavily militarized place like Iran or anybody that has a strong standing army when
yeah.
we don't have to engage in that?
Do you think it's you know, you think it's America's place to go in and save people like the Iraqis or the Afghans or the Syrians? I mean, being the superpower of the world, is that something which America, you know, it's said that like America should go to war so that war doesn't come to America. Is that something that, you know, rings kind of true with you?
You know, I want to argue from different perspectives because part of me thinks no one country should be, you know, exerting their force and their will onto the rest of the world to such a degree, you know, because a lot of times when we do that, it's to serve our own national self-interest, our own foreign policy objectives, which don't always align with the rest of the world. But then um, you have conflicts like Armenia right now, and you know that like that pop up that you know create a lot of human suffering in the world.
Yeah.
So if the United Nations is unable to act, then then NATO or some type of coalition should. Like Bosnia should not have been allowed to continue for as long as it did. Syria should not have ended this way,
Yeah.
you know. But what it shows you is what really happens when you waste your political capital on something like Iraq that this did not need an invasion. This entire situation did not warrant an invasion by a large coalition. But by spending all of our global political power there and making a huge mistake, it limited our ability to involve ourselves or at least lead coalition building for future conflicts, something like Syria.
You know, in Afghanistan, when America first came in, there was bombing. You know, like they started bombing the crap out of like Taliban positions for months. You know, the Northern Alliance would just sit back and just watch as these you know positions would be bombed, their tanks, their whatever they had, and that was because America had sent in teams of special forces that went in and had laser tags, and they laser tagged these things, positions, and air power came down, bam, slammed them with the biggest ordnances America's has. That's how they became scared. You know, that scared them out. You know, it was like fire coming down, and there was no, you know, they didn't think there was going to be an end to it. It was like, if we don't run, we're all going to like die. You know, daisy cutters were being dropped. So, you know, suddenly that you see one whole kilometer or mile of land just go, you know, it's there 1 second and it's not there the other. But then once we took Kabul, the American military suddenly switched tactics. The tactic that was working with special forces, suddenly it was like, oh, no more special forces. We need regular military to come in. special forces, you gotta wear regular clothes, regular uniforms, cut those beards. You can't be eating there over there with those Afghans, forces. That's not the way we do things. You gotta get back to the base. You gotta do things the regular military kind of way. And that started to be the end of us winning, Afghans and Americans, because suddenly it was like, you were in bases. When the troops left, it was in huge convoys. You know how it is.
Yeah.
And so everyone was confused, like, what, we were doing something really good with these special forces. Now we've got not, we've got this other system that doesn't work in a place like Afghanistan. That's basically guerrilla warfare. And so, I don't. Is there a way that America needs to change the way it thinks of wars when it goes to a certain place?
Well, I absolutely. I mean, the military always has to like adapt to whatever the terrain is, and it has to adapt to the disposition of whatever your enemy is. But what probably like most things that get in the way, I really don't know for sure. But what I would guess to say is that the idea was to control Afghanistan as a country, like by like to really control it and try to um, bring it to a point where the Taliban could not exist or move in or share any of that space. And so to do that, they wanted to hold key portions of land, key cities. They wanted to have, control over all of these different spaces. And to do that, you got to have boots on the ground. You have to have like strong supply networks to get in and out of places to support troop movements and physical spaces. And that's probably what they were trying to do. They stopped relying on the small tactic, because I do know in the beginning that's all it was. All Afghanistan was a very concentrated effort by special forces.
Yeah.
But they wanted to actually maintain control of the whole country, and that's how they did it, by putting boots on the ground. And you're right, that just creates a lot of problems, especially in a place like Afghanistan. You just cannot hold Afghanistan. Like I don't need to tell you the history. It's just the way it is, the way the people are. It's like I don't think an outside force can come in and control the destiny of Afghanistan for long. I just don't think it's possible.
It's hard, man, because America relies on the elite of a country to help them, and when with Afghans, you might give them some money every month or a lot of money, but they the geographical position allows them to have be influenced by many different players. When it comes to U.S. military, right? Some people have been talking about how it's just too much it's too big. It needs to lean down, get leaner, spend more on certain things. What do you think?
I think yeah. I think that's just like where technology is taking us. But you have to have like experts make these decisions. Like you have to have the right amount of people that are there who are to maintain a strong readiness.
Yeah.
But you don't want to have so many that, like, if you don't have anything for them to do, then they become extremely they become, I don't want to say a liability, but that is what it is. Like an idle Marine is a dangerous thing. like we just say it all the time. It's like if you give Marines too much free time, they're gonna break something, and that's just the way it is. So it's like you constantly have to have that internal focus within your military to make sure that your force isn't bloated, that you have the right numbers that you actually need, because numbers don't always make you successful. You need to have the right numbers. All the people that you have need to be, strong working minds. They need to be experienced. They need to be well trained, and they need to be well equipped. And these days, they got to have better gear than who they're going up against, because the Russians and the Chinese, if those are our force-on-force adversaries for future wars, they're very well trained. They're very well equipped. And in the case of the Chinese, they have a much larger force than we have. So, so I don't know. I think there are threat assessment experts who make that call, but I think it's something we should look at. I don't think bloated, hyper expensive military is absolutely necessary. I think a country should invest in science and technology if it wants to advance. That's what we should be known for. The US should be known for its advances in science and technology. We should be looked up at for those things and not feared because of our hyperactive military.
Yeah, and I agree. Yeah. When you came back from the war, right? A lot of people complain. I've heard a lot online, a lot of complaints about how, like, Veterans Affairs, these kinds of things, help getting things that you need to reassimilate into society, maybe medical help. It's not easy to come by. Is this true?
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I think the VA system screws a lot of things up. That's for sure. But as far as like getting access to it, like when I came back, it took me almost 10 years before I decided to look into my veterans benefits. It took me a long time just because I felt like I didn't deserve it, or by taking it I was weak or something. And the 10 years of like self-medication and just a lot of struggle before I was like, you know what, let me look into what's there. And I'm really glad I did. And just because you're like looking at your veterans benefits doesn't mean you're going to end up in some room with a bunch of dudes talking about your feelings. That's there if you want to go find it. But
Right.
A lot of it's just making sure you have health care. I go to the VA for health care, and it's decent. It's just as good. Like, it's not like the super fancy office, but they do have like up-to-date everything. They have very skilled doctors and nurses that work there. It's great. It's a great thing to have that I'm glad I have access to. I used all my GI Bill benefits for education. That is kind of hard to do because there's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
But it's not inaccessible. It's like you just have to really focus on what you're doing, listen to what people are telling you. But I know so many people that I was in the military with who I've had to argue with about accessing their benefits, and some do and some don't. And I have had some friends who've gotten caught in the system where it took forever to get their benefits approved. So then, and that is a big problem with the VA, is managing their cases and keeping track of people. But I didn't have a bad experience.
All right. Okay. So coming back to America, was that an easy choice, or would you rather have wanted to stay abroad?
I went back and forth with it. It's like I kind of wanted to stay abroad, but I had no method to be paid while I was there. So part of the plan was to get a job in international development, which would eventually equate to a long-term job overseas.
Yeah.
I wanted to, like, for a while when I first started doing this, my plan was to work for the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and ultimately work at an embassy. But now I've also gotten older and realized the embassy life isn't really what I'm looking for. I actually enjoy living in Washington, D.C., and had some opportunities for long-term overseas things to come up, but I haven't really pursued them just because I kind of like my life here. Maybe overseas, something will take me overseas one day, but and I truly hope it does. But until then, I'm just doing the career. Deciding to come back to DC was kind of hard. I wasn't sure where to go. Like when you're coming back from embassy guard duty and you've been in the Marines for 8 years, it's like hard to figure out what you want to do with your life. But I ultimately chose DC because there is a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah, and I think that was a good choice. I mean, with international, development, DC is the place to be. I mean, you really can't be anywhere else.
Right, that was one of the driving factors to come here because this is where everything is for that. Unless you get a job overseas somewhere, but at some point everybody comes back to DC. So there's always been a lot of opportunity here for in a ton of different fields.
Yeah.
But you do gotta come out here and work for it. But it is a good city for that.
When so a lot of my friends are Republicans, a lot of them are Democrats, like libertarians. I mean, they're all over the place.
How would you classify yourself? What do you?
I don't know. I'm so central, man, that
Okay.
I like certain things that Republicans talk about, and I like that certain things that Democrats talk about, even the libertarians. But when it comes to it, man, I can't really class. My father was telling me a few years ago, like, you got to choose which side you're on. And I said, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I can. I listen to the candidate. Like, if there's a candidate, I'll listen to each one, and whichever one makes more sense to me, I'm voting for that one. And I don't care if they're whatever political association they've got. Um, I just need to listen to that person telling me what. If I believe them, then I'm going with that person. And I think when it comes to with America, I think a lot of people forget that local politics is so important. Governors, mayors, all these people are really make change happen. The president, of course. I mean, he has a lot. He has a lot to do with foreign affairs, with what happens, with federal law. But when it comes to it, those governors are really on the ground. So I like to vote for local elections too, man. But I don't know what I would classify myself as.
Not sure which party which ticket to run on, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see, man. We'll see.